to welcome our presenter, Jeannie Reagan-Dinius. She is the Director of Special Initiatives at the Indiana DNR Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. And she's here to share about what the DHPA does, the Statewide Preservation Plan, and then some resources that I think you'll find really useful. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jeannie, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you everyone for hopping on, and it's good to see faces and familiar faces. It's been a while since I've seen a lot of people, so this has been pretty great. So I'm going to talk about our office and what our office does, and try to pin it back to how it impacts you guys, because I know you'll probably get stuff periodically and you're like, I don't know what to do with that. So hopefully we can help with that. So let me share my screen. This one. There we go. All right, so I am a state employee, so I hope when you leave you feel like your taxes are doing something worthwhile. We are the Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology, which stems from a 1966 law that mandated each state create a state preservation office. And in Indiana, they put us in DNR. It makes sense if you look at like our responsibilities as compared to the federal government. We have a lot of responsibilities to the National Park Service, and in the National Park Service, they're under the Department of Interior. So we are in DNR. So while the rest of DNR deals with the natural environment, we deal with the cultural environment. I will say DHPA is our name. So you'll see that written a lot. You'll hear us say it because it's easier than the Department of Natural Resources Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. So just know that that's our office. We also deal with the Historic Review Board, which I'll talk about in a later slide. So basically, our office is one of the many state agencies that deal with history, preservation, conservation, things like that, but we specifically deal with things at the federal level also. So one of the first things we do is a lot of the other things can't happen until we know. So we know what's where, what's available, what's still standing, what shape it's in, and things like that. So we have a survey and registration section. So these are what are called the interim reports that I'm sure all of you have seen used, things like that. Every county has one. We have surveyed every county at least once. We are now going back and resurveying other counties. And basically we hire people to get on a road and drive every road in your county, and they're looking for anything 40 years or older with integrity. And I mean, like, so it looks like it did, or it's, you know, it's a good example of what it was, you know, 40 years or older. So that means we're surveying things from the 1970s, which makes me sad because that means we're all getting a little old. But they're surveying mid-century modern, new housing additions, things like that. So things are getting interesting. There's resources now available about how do you analyze housing, post-World War II housing, things like that, that we can get you access to. Sometimes though, the topic is more contextual and more social history. And so Underground Railroad is one of the things that we work on. It's one of my program areas, and we're looking for every person, place, and event related to the Underground Railroad in Indiana. And it helps us know about the history, but it's not just the buildings that are there. So like the center building, this is in Madison, great building, still there, the person's house, fantastic. This one is now a parking lot. It was a train station that an event happened here, but for this one, we're looking for things, whether there's a building left or not. For county survey, it's whether it's still standing or not. For Underground Railroad, I care that it happened there. So sometimes it's only you know, a parking lot, and we can work on interpreting that. This is in Seymour, and they have an interpretive sign now from the Historical Bureau near this area that explained what happened and the information that was going on. So this is a great time to do interpretation for that. We're with the Historic Theater Initiative, which is also one of my program areas, and we look at single screen theaters, drive-ins, opera houses, anything like that to help theater owners do their job better and maintain that building better, whatever that is. So that kind of varies from place to place. We have other diversity-based populations, and this is everything from African American to Jewish heritage. We've done some French in Indiana. I know there's more that's going to be coming up. It kind of just varies for a topic. Like right now, I'm working on 2 different things. We're working on the Green Book places in Indiana. So we're trying to identify all the places that African Americans, when they traveled in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, used this book that was published that said, here's the restaurants you can go to, here are the, hotels that you can stay in. So we're identifying all those spots in Indiana, and then we're trying to try to determine which ones are still standing, and then possibly list them on the National Register. So I'll actually be in touch with, if your county had one, we'll be in touch with you guys probably next year. I have an intern working on it. She's almost done with the what's still standing. We have about 196 facilities of this nature in the state, and about 24 still standing. And then we're going to kind of go from there. So these diversity-based things vary according to what's going on at the national level, Park Service, interest of the governor's office. It just kind of really varies. We have bridges. So we have a bridge survey where when we work with INDOT on this survey a lot to determine which bridges are worthy of preservation, which ones need to be saved, things like that. We have information on bridges that have even been torn down. So we've got a lot of good information on the different bridges that have been around the state. And some kind of cool ones like this that just, aren't standing anymore. So we were lucky enough to get a picture of this one in 2001 before it was torn down. And then my favorite, because again, my program area is the Cemetery and Burial Ground Registry. So my job is to locate all the cemeteries in the state and document them. We're documenting them primarily so that we don't build on top of them, but because I am who I am, I'm a genealogist. I'm also looking at resources, how to care for them, who in the community is going to become my little cemetery army. I know some of you are in my little army of cemetery advocates, and we just protect the cemeteries. And we're looking at everything from big cemeteries with lots of people we think will never get lost, to the one-off grave in the middle of the forest that we want to make sure doesn't get taken out, or anything like that. We also deal with issues around cemeteries, like cows in the middle of the cemetery, vandalism, people digging into graves, any kind of thing that would require law enforcement conservation officer. So we deal with that. And then we deal with moves. This is at the intersection of 465 and 69 on the northeast side of Indianapolis. And this cemetery was moved to Crown Hill Cemetery. And so if there's a move of a cemetery, our office deals with the archaeology of that, maintaining integrity and respect, scientific specialization, all that kind of stuff on that. So our office deals with that. We deal with all the archaeology that happens in the state. So we may not be the ones out digging, but we monitor it. We give the license for the permits for the archaeologists to do their digging, making sure again that they're following stuff. If something happens in an area where that we're building a road project and they come across human remains, they come across a canal feature, things like that, the archaeologists in my office will help INDOT deal with that, or whatever agency or building owner or whatever, deal with that issue and protect those remains and those pieces. And I've been doing this from a long time. This is from back in the 30s. I think this is a historical bureau dig. So Michelle, you guys were digging early on with the Historical Society. So that's one of the things that we deal with. So then with that, we know all these things exist and where they are and how they're important and things like that. We place things on the National Register of Historic Places. They can go on for a variety of reasons, amazing architecture, something important happened there, somebody important is associated with it. Archaeology sites can be on the National Register. And so these are things that you can have access to and see the different, and then there'll be a document related to that, kind of a history of that building, that neighborhood, whatever that is. Places that are listed in the National Register are eligible for grants and tax credits. So the grants go to non-for-profits, business, schools, governments. The tax credits go to homeowners and businesses. And so we give grants to do restoration, give grants for archaeology, kind of a variety of different ways that we give them. And they come out every October. The nominations or the applications are due every October. And then we get the regulatory, which is probably something you guys get a lot of and don't know really what to do with it. So every time there is federal funds, federal permits, state funds, state permits, they have to go through a regulatory review, and we're looking at the impact on the cultural resources. So then the people doing the project have to contact locals. Basically, they have individuals that they are supposed to contact, and one of them is the county historian. And it gives you an opportunity to go, all right, you have this building here. So the building that I've got up there, it's a cute little house. Well, actually, it's not a house. And the county historian would know, oh, that's the AME church. That's historically the AME church. That was a part of the Underground Railroad, where the consultants doing the work, may just know a little bit of the architecture, things like that. So it gives you an opportunity to comment on that. The comments that come into us, our staff deals with thousands of these, and so they may not know every resource, and they may miss a resource if the consultant doesn't bring it in, and if the consultant doesn't say, hey, this is important because of this, that's your opportunity too. So when you get these letters, and I know that they are wordy and there's lots of legal crap in there and stuff like that, your biggest thing is to look at the resources of the area that they're talking about and see if there's anything missing. And I think that's, for us, is the big thing. You are our eyes and ears on the ground, and you know your history in your county more than we do. And so if you can call us and say, hey, that bridge is like, it's the first of this type, or this happened there, or something like that, it might impact the project. It might not, but it might impact the project and help protect that resource. And we'd rather get it on the front end than at the end, after the bridge was torn down or the house was modified, and everyone go, oh, well, that's a shame. They should have saved it because, that's where Lincoln stayed. Well, no one told us that. So that's kind of thing, the biggest thing that is you as the county historians can really help us with. Now, how do we preserve things here at the office? Well, our first thing is by the recognition. By recognizing, then we get the regulation. And once we get the regulation, then that can help with some things. We have the financial incentive. So it's kind of like the carrot and the stick. The carrot is the financial incentive. The regulation is the stick. We also do some classes. This is actually the Historical Society in our office used to do a cemetery workshop, preservation workshop, and so we help with those. We have other classes that we deal with. We pull at the heartstrings of people. So we're really trying to show people how important these things are to place and who we are, and so that hopefully they'll want to. And we've been trying recently to connect with younger people. It's one of the things we're trying to work on is if we get them younger, then they will care when they're 40. So it's one of the things that we try to work on. So again, to help preserve our built environment and kind of who we are. We get a lot of public outreach. So we have speakers. So if you are a county historian in your historical society or genealogy club or Kiwanis group needs a speaker, we give talks. We give them for free. Don't even have to pay for our gas. And so there's a variety of different things that we can talk about depending on your interest. I do Underground Railroad and cemeteries. There's archaeologists in the office, so we can offer that. We have educational materials. We have materials for teachers, educators, a lot of stuff on our website. So that's a big place to go, is our website, because it has any of the materials that we have that we can put up there, we put up there. We were starting story maps now, which is a new way to tell stories. And so those are available online. We also have our Facebook page. So if you would like to keep up on more current things going on and just fun facts and learn a tidbit here and there, you can go on our Facebook page. And then our training that we offer, which is a lot of times is the conference, and as county historians, we offer 2 free conference scholarships to the county historians every year. Try to give it to the historian whose county it's in, and then somebody around there, but always have availability for going to the conference. And a few of our publications. So we do our e-newsletter. So this comes out quarterly, and it's things going on in the office, things going on in the preservation world. We are very good at trying to look outward, and it's not just about us, it's about preservation in general and what's going on in other state agencies around the world, stuff around the country, even stuff around the world sometimes. We have our Guide to Preservation Services, which is an online piece that you can get that talks about what our office does. A cultural resource management plan. This is our plan for our way of preserving the state and preserving our state history. We have to redo this every 10 years. So the 2021 just came out. And so it's available to look at things we think are important, ways we think are important to do preservation. Again, we have the educational material, and our website has changed. This whole state website has changed. So the names have changed. So this is our new, it used to be smaller, and now it's huge with historic preservation. But all the stuff I've talked about, you can get to the different pages on that page, or from this page, and you can find educational stuff on archaeology and Underground Railroad and cemeteries, and the 106 stuff is all available on those pages. And then we've got events. So May is Historic Preservation Month. So if you're in your county and you'd like to do a tour, walking tour, it's a great month to do it. We do more highlighting of things, try to get press releases out, things like that. Same way, September is Archaeology Month. So anything related to archaeology, everything from a talk to, a kids program, anything like that. And if you've got questions on like, well, I don't know what to do, our state archaeologists would be happy to have a conversation with you about ideas for ways to have an event, things like that. The Commission Assistance Mentoring Program, we call it CAMP. We like to shorten everything, it's easier that way. If are for the local communities that have a local preservation commission. So it's a local zoning issue. They can get advice from this program. They can get training from this program. They eventually might, if they feel like they could, become a part of their certified local government program, which is it's a special designation that cities can get for their preservation work. It gets them access to some funds, things like that. But being a part of that program, it can help locally. So if someone came to you and said, hey, we want to do some preservation through the city, you could contact us, we could get you in touch with them, and they would give them advice, training, things like that. And again, the last thing is our preservation program. We offer the conference every year. We just got done with it here in September. So the next one will be at the end of September. I think it's September 26th through the 30th. It's going to be in South Bend. In person, willing, everything going the way that it's supposed to, we'll be back in person. We'll be in South Bend, and then the year after that we'll be in Muncie. And so these programs are both preservation and archaeology. Some are very technical. So if you really ever wanted to know about how to preserve a roof, sometimes like that. Some are more educational pieces on how to do stuff in the, to help you advocate for your community. Some are hot topics. It just really depends on what's going on, and again, around the country, around the world in preservation. So we have those speakers. That is a joint program with Indiana University, our office, and Indiana Landmarks. And we bring in people from all over the country with this program. And it's usually 2 to 3 days with some pre-conference workshops, usually that day before. And then there is my contact information. If you ever have a question and you don't know who in my office to contact, you can contact me and I will transfer you. If you tell me what you're in, it's like I have an issue with an archaeology thing, I'll transfer you to them. First, I'm happy to help you guys. It's always good to talk to some of you who I haven't seen in a while. But I also understand how confusing government can be. And so you can always call us, and you can call me, and I will do what I can to get you to the right person who can help you sort it out, figure out who's doing what. So there, in a very short time, is kind of what our office does. So now I'm opening it up to questions, whether you have a specific question about a project you're working on, something that we do or don't do, and you want to know who does it, or anything like that. So Jeanette, anybody asking me questions yet?
We don't have any yet. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have any questions. Do you want to start it off if there's no questions right away? Jeannie, would you mind sharing a little bit about the SHARD database and what that is and how people can use it?
Yeah, I totally forgot that, didn't I? Yes. So SHARD is our online database of resources in Indiana. It includes the buildings, the bridges, cemeteries, the National Register, county survey. So everything, so the interim report, all of that stuff is now available online. So you no longer have to come into our office and get the records from the office. You don't have to call me and say, hey, I need a cemetery record. Can you send me what you have? What we have is available online in the database. It's available in a searchable database, but also on a map. So the GIS map is a way that you can go into your county and you can click on dots and it'll bring up the information, whether it's a building or a bridge, things like that. And so that's a great first resource for you to kind of look for things that we have in the office. Again, people call me all the time and say, well, what else do you have on that cemetery? If I have it, it's scanned and it's put in there, because it's easier for you to find it at 3 in the morning than it is to wait for me to get back with you and send something to you. So go onto our website. And again, it's both a searchable database and a map. So whichever you prefer, and there's benefits of searching each. And as we're moving forward with all of our information, it's all getting scanned and attached to the appropriate resource. So again, bridges, buildings, cemeteries. The archaeological sites are protected, so you will not be able to get into it. Don't ask me for an account for Shard. These archaeological sites are protected because people loot. And you think, really? Do people really loot? Oh yeah. I'm shocked when I started hearing about how many incidences we have of people digging in places they shouldn't be digging. So those resources are protected from things like that. But if you're in your county and you have a question, or you have an issue, or you have something that we need to, you need to talk to one of our archaeologists, we can do that. They can do things in a sensitive manner so you can get the information you need, and we can still protect the sites. So that's not a problem there. Yeah, I meant to add those slides in, and then I don't know, something happened and I got distracted, and that was the end of that.
I put the link to the Shard database in the chat too, and I'll include some of these resources in your next county historian update too, so you'll be able to link to them from those. And so Jenny Awad in Dearborn County said your group is working on the county underground railroad. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Me talk about it or her talk about it?
Well, I was going to see if Jenny had any questions, or if she wanted to share kind of what's happening there.
Sorry about my camera screen. I'm going to have to switch computers, but I have a group of women that are working on the Underground Railroad. It's become a monster. So it just grows arms and legs, and we've started collecting and copying. We have the Union Valley Church, Black Church here in town, and some of them are helping us with it. We've copied and made a resource in our resource room for everyone that has ever belonged to the Union Valley Church and their history. So that kind of linked into our Underground Railroad part, but it's kind of hard to focus on some things, but we're trying, and it'll be great when we're done, but it's a big task. I have to give credit to anybody that's ever done it, because it just grows, like I said, it grows arms and legs, and what do we do,
Well, I'm so glad to hear you guys are doing that, because it's a big part of the state where stuff is going on. If you need help, you call me. I can come down and I can look at what you've got and put you in some directions. I can help you with maybe some ways to do some things to do with it. Okay, now you have this information. Let's now do something with it. Connect you with people in other counties. That's a huge thing to do, is make sure that you're talking to other people and stuff like that. I do have a question for you, Jenny. Is Chris McHenry still around?
No, she's in a nursing home.
Okay.
She's not doing well. Joyce Bear is sitting here with me. She's in on our meeting here. She's a former historian, so she's here and ready to help. And
well, if you get me out of the office, I will love you forever, because if I can come down and do research. So give me you've got my email, give me a holler. We'll set some time up. I'll spend as much time as you want, and I can do a variety of different things. I know I'm working with Bloomington right now and helping them with some things. I got other places where I do work and stuff like that, and sometimes even some of the names might jog a memory for me, and going, I remember they were talking about that name in Allen County, because these people moved and did things. And so anything I can do to help, just give me a holler.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So Jeannie, you said you're working with Monroe County. Glenda, you mentioned that you're working on it there. So what kind of work are you all doing?
Well, and I have a feeling that other folks have been in touch with Jeannie, because I've thought of it, but I haven't done it yet. So I think folks at the History Center and at the Public Library are working on finding documentation that will be acceptable to the state to get a state historic marker about the Underground Railroad, because we have wonderful stories, but documenting them is the challenge. And,
you are
and the
correct, 'cause I didn't-
librarian,
Yeah.
and the librarian keeps saying, we have to connect to these people. I forget which county it is, but she already has made some links, I think, so.
Lawrence County. And actually, I have a meeting at the Bureau with Casey about your Covenanter, or whatever the church's name is.
The
after
Covenanter
this-
Church.
Covenanter Church. So yeah, so and again, this thing is that we all know each other, we all work with each other. And so if it's a marker and stuff like that, I work with Michelle's group all the time, and you know, we share resources and stuff. And so, but it's Lawrence County that
Yes.
she's supposed to be getting in touch with.
Thank you. And yes, I'll try to get a little more involved in that one.
So I have another question for Jeannie. Would you be willing to share, I know you work a lot with cemeteries, we talked about, would you be willing to share some of the common issues that come up when people are dealing with cemeteries and cemetery preservation, and things that county historians in particular might run up against?
So the first thing is people want to know where grandma and grandpa, great grandma and grandpa are, and then do something there. So our cemetery registry is not find a grave. So I'm not going to have the name of the person and where they are, but if you know the name of the cemetery, we can get information. You know, if you guys probably know what the cemetery is, but our database will tell them where that cemetery is. So then the first question they want to know is, why is it in horrible shape and whose responsibility is that? Well, in Indiana, it's a little complicated. Every cemetery, though, is owned, and there is an owner for every cemetery. Sometimes it's just the township trustee. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's private. Cemeteries can be privately owned, and so that's an issue we deal with. That, you know, as a farmer, I can keep you off my property to go back and see your relatives, even though that, you know, that's your great-great-grandfather. I can keep you off property. So I think that's the biggest thing, is people want to go back there and getting access. You need to ask permission, and then once back there, what type of work needs to be done and can be done and has to be done. It varies from cemetery to cemetery according to ownership, because there are state laws that define each of these. If this is the owner, this is what they have to do. If this is the owner, kind of things like that. And so those will be your big things, is, you know, how do we get back there and asking for permission? And the farmer said I have to keep off their ground. Can they do that? Yes. Then once you get back there, is like, do they, you know, how do they let the cemetery get like that? Things like that. And it's a complicated law. And so if you have a concern, first thing is you can send people to me. You don't have to be that person who helps that genealogist handle what's going on in the cemetery. And if you want to, you can, but you don't have to be that person. You can always send them on to me, and I can try to work them through it. Part of it is going to be the land ownership. So if you can help them figure out who the landowner is, then by the time they get to me, I can help them with what law pertains to it or not. Then when it comes to, you know, cleaning and things like that, there's no laws in Indiana about how you have to clean. There's some good standards, things like that, but there's no laws. But if you've got, and Jeanette, what I can do is I will send you, I've got a couple of PDFs that you could just send out to everybody.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, Lynette Strand's got a shortened version of her book that we can send out to everybody, that will kind of give the basics of how to do some just very simple things and stuff like that in the cemetery. So I think for, you know, genealogists, I think that's going to be your big thing of what people want to know is kind of, where is it? And if you have a cemetery where you think you know where it is and stones aren't there anymore, I'm working, you know, again, I'm working with some people all the time on this. We're working with Wells County right now on their county farm cemetery. So if you've got questions like that, you can get a hold of me. It might be me, it might be one of my coworkers, depending on what the project is and what's going on. And we can see what we can do to help you identify exactly where the cemetery is. Sometimes we might just all commiserate together because we just don't know. Bad records, not our fault, and we kind of deal with it as that. I did a question for Judy. Judy, unmute yourself. Because you're in Rensselaer, right?
Yes.
Judy, you're in Rensselaer. So I want to know with these, I'm trying to get a hold of the people at, see, this is what you guys are good for too, is helping me on things.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a hold of the people at St. Joseph College at the archives, and I know that the college is closed and no one's answering me. How can I, because we're going to be working on a Indian cemetery
Right.
project for
What?
Rensselaer and Wabash, and I can't find anybody who will. So do you know some?
Okay, I would suggest probably Sheila Maxwell. So I will send you her information. I might try to call her first. Because
Perfect,
she
thank you.
actually worked for 2 years after it closed on the archives. So she knows pretty well. There is, what they have is online. Have you searched their?
I've seen that. I just wanted to know if there was anything else, because they don't have any lists of like the kids' names.
Right.
And that's what we're looking for, because the one in Wabash, Earlham College has a lot of the kids' names. So we've
Yeah,
got
so-
like 130 kids. So we were just wondering if there was anything at,
You know, I've never seen a list
Okay.
either. So, but Sheila would know, so I'll try to do that right away.
thank you, Judy.
Yeah.
And this is the other way that I know our office and other offices use, is that, again, I don't know these people and you do, and you're the local experts. And so I thank you for that participation.
We can try.
Yes.
So Jeannie, what is the work that you're doing with these particular cemeteries? If
All
you
these
could
things have
share it.
happened. Yeah, no, all these things have happened out west. You know, they're finding the graves, mass graves, we're finding this. And so the question in our office, because we're curious and nosy and, you know, that's what we do, said, well, how many are buried in Indiana's graves, or grave sites? So we started doing research. And so Wabash is White's Institute. And we know of 11, there's a cemetery on property and with stones, and there are 9 stones. We know of 11 people that have passed. So what I'm doing now is trying to get a list of all the kids who are there, then trying to find them in the 1900 census. The school closed in 1895. So if I can find them in the 1900 census, that means they're not in the cemetery. So we're working on that. Once I get that done, then I will be moving over to St. Joseph College, which is where that cemetery, or where that school was. And we know that there are 3 buried in the Catholic cemetery. So we're just going to try to find out if there are more. And it's more of a, again, this comes from who we get at the big level. The Department of Interior, their new director, she is a Native American woman, and that was one of her initiatives, that the Department of Interior, which is where the Bureau of Indian Affairs is, who ran these schools after 1895, she put out a mandate. We need to look at what we've done, and you're not going to fix it. I mean, these children are already passed and things like that, but we can identify them. We can get them home if we, you know, things like that. So we just decided to be a little more proactive here in Indiana and do that stuff. And then I get to do research. And for me, this is like, I spent a day at Earlham College with old papers, and it was just like the best thing ever. And then we'll go out to the cemetery. We're going to try to, we've got some archaeologists who are going to help. We're not going to dig anybody up, but we can use ground penetrating radar and technology like that. And they said that they'll help. And then we're going to look at interpretation. I've already given Michelle, I talk to your staff all the time. I'm always giving them ideas, but there's actually one famous woman who came out of the Wabash school who then went to Earlham. She was then a feminist, did women's suffrage. She also did literature and translated all of her people's stories into English. So that's why we have them. She needs a marker. So things like that, that we'll then try to find people who will help interpret, help, you know, into programming, things like that. So, yeah. So that's my fun new project. Yeah, every time I start to get bored, I get these fun new projects that keep me around. So.
Well, I had only heard there was one in the Catholic cemetery. So here you're giving me information.
Well, again, that's rumor. So then we got to prove it, whether it's 1 or 3 or 40.
Okay.
And we're going to have to, that's what we'll have to prove. So we'll work on that, Judy. So we'll work on that together.
Okay,
So,
thank
yeah.
you.
That brings up
question.
another, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Donna.
As you know, Jeannie, in Sullivan County, we've moved a lot of cemeteries due to the coal mine. And I was wondering, do you have those records back in the 1970s and 80s? I want to compile a database of some sort or a list of all the cemeteries that have been moved due to the coal mine. I've got the recent ones basically in the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
But the 1970s, I do have some information, but I don't know if I have it all.
Let me see. We've got some stuff. The Division of Reclamation, another DNR agency, will have some. We have an archaeologist who we work with through that. I mean, I know I'm trying to also pull that stuff so let me see what else I can get. And
Okay.
I'm going to make a note, otherwise I'm going to forget. And then in 2 weeks, you're going to call me and go, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. But yeah, Donna, let me see what I can find for you on.
Because I do have a lot of researchers, like, well, what happened to that cemetery? That ground out there is totally different or whatever. And I do have a list, I do have some documented, but I may not have them all. I just want to make sure that I have them, and that way I can let other people know as well.
Do you want all the coal areas or just Sullivan?
Well, I mean, you can do, my surrounding counties would be great, like Knox and Greene. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and in chart in our database or on the map, we have if we know where the original cemetery is, there's a mark for it, even though it's like it says it's in an area that's all been gone.
Yeah, it's moved. Yeah.
So but the cemetery's original location will be there, and then when you click on that, it'll tell you if we know where they were moved to. But let me see what else I can get you.
Okay. And I can check that as well. So. But I know it isn't, am I correct in thinking that they had to have a permit back then as well? Or no?
Things were a little wigglier than.
Yeah, back then, I know in the 60s, like, they may have not been as, I don't know.
They were not as thorough as they are today.
Yeah.
Jenny,
Yes.
Steve Barnett from Marion County. Can you speak to the Central State Hospital Cemetery and the apparent lack of concern that the city of Indianapolis has in that area?
Mm-hmm. So, so the way the state law reads that is if there's all these laws regarding cemeteries, and except there's an exemption, and the exemption is government. So government is exempt from having to follow the rules. So if this was on private property, things would have been different. But so the way that the development law moves, or the way it says, is that they have to have permission from the county executive. So the mayor had to sign off on it, and he delegated that down to DPW or something like that. And so they did that, which again is a concern for our office. We've met with them several times before that, recommending things, but all I can do is recommend, and I can't force, because the law exempts them out until they find something. And then once they find something, then they have to stop, and that's when then they had to do the archaeology for that trenching for it. Wasn't water, I think it was
I think it was water line.
Water, okay, it was water lines. So that's what happened there. So anytime that a city or county, your township trustee, anything like that are involved in any kind of construction, they're exempt from having to go through us. Unless there's that federal law, that was section 106. So sometimes if they're using federal money, that might not, but if you're just using county money, this in case it was some city and some private money, they didn't have to go through us. They did move, I want to say 15, but don't quote me on that, graves for that. And they moved them over on the other side of the road over by Mount Jackson, between that cemetery, the cemetery 2 and Mount Jackson. And that each individual had their own grave. So we didn't mass grave them back together. They each have their own grave now. And they're going to be getting, each of those graves are going to be getting a small marker that basically says unknown burial. With those graves, we'll never know who they originally were. That's just not possible for the way that things are today, technology-wise. But that's the issue with that one, is that the government is exempt and they don't have to listen to us. We make it, yes, we would make it cheaper, because you wouldn't, you'd go around those things. And there are some other projects that'll probably be coming down the pike that you'll get information on here probably in the next 6 months or so about some other cemeteries and stuff. So hopefully they'll listen to us this time.
Thanks.
So,
Jeannie, oh, go ahead, Glenda.
Well, if we're done with when we're done talking about cemeteries, then I would like to ask a question about the historical theater initiative. So
Okay.
let's
Go
finish,
ahead.
let's finish cemeteries.
oh, cemeteries will never be done.
I know.
Go ahead and ask me your question, Glenda.
Okay, so in the theater, which is now known as the Buskirk Chumley Theater, is celebrating its 100th anniversary next year, and they are doing a big planning event, which I will tell all of you we're really excited about. Will include a documentary which will show on WTIU next November or December. So we're really excited about the progress we're making in that direction. But one of the things I need to do is find more information about the other theaters that the Vonderschmidts owned, and find as much as I can in your records about the Indiana theaters. So maybe I just need to be in touch, but are some of those things in Shard or someplace else?
They are in Shard.
Okay.
And Shard actually has a drop down just for cemetery or for theaters. See,
Okay.
I told you cemeteries are never done, but just for theaters. Because early on, there was a gentleman who I think is still around, and his name eludes me right now, but in about an hour I'll think of it. And
Okay.
he sends me stuff. He took photos early on of like the Von Lee and was it the Princess, and stuff like that. And so we've got some pictures there, and we've got resources. So start with Shard and then give me a holler, and we'll talk more from there.
Okay, thanks. I love coming to meetings where I get whole new sets of information. Thank you. And the same with the bridges.
Yes.
Is that in Shard too?
Yes, and it's a separate drop down, because the drop downs will be county history, which is kind of everything, cemeteries, bridges, theaters, and National Register.
Okay. Because we have the historic bridge between Monroe and Owen County that needs some attention and love right now. So thanks. And it's already it already has its state marker. That's not the problem.
Can I ask a quick question for Jeannie and make a comment as well? Does anyone else? Jeannie, obviously we work very closely together on a variety of different projects, but because of the confusion of state government, we often get calls that should go to DHPA. I want to verify that anything to do with historic preservation or building preservation, structure preservation, we usually send folks on to Paul. Is that still correct?
That's fine. It depends. And I know it depends on what they want. And so Paul's a good place to start. They can always send it to me. Depending on what they want, once you start talking to them, then they might need something else. But Paul's a good one. I'm always willing to take it, because Lindsay sends anything to me that's like cemeteries. And again, 99% of the time it's me, but sometimes it's not. So we'll move it on from there. So don't worry about that.
Okay. And I just wanted to comment too on the Underground Railroad markers. I think Glenda had brought that up, and maybe someone else too. And I know you guys are going to be talking about that even later this afternoon. And it's just difficult with that topic for state markers in particular. We definitely encourage people to apply for those. We like getting them. We think they're important to mark. But, by the whole nature of it being underground and everything secretive, it's hard to find primary documentation related to that. And so we do try to be lenient's not the word, but we try to be helpful in finding other sources that can verify the information, not just traditional records. But we know that can be frustrating for people who are trying to document that history and want to do markers. But we are willing to work with you all as best as we can on that. And please don't take that as we don't think these topics are important. It's just that it's almost a separate set of research that folks have to do, because everyone and their brother is like, oh, this old house was part of the Underground Railroad, and oftentimes that's just not accurate, but sometimes it is. And so we want to continue working on those topics, but I guess I just wanted to put out there, we know that can be frustrating when trying to do state marker applications, and we are happy to help and sit down and work with applicants in any way we can on those too. we usually talk through that with Jeannie as well. So.
And one of the challenges that I'm realizing, for example, with the one in Monroe County, the particular discussion in Monroe County, is we have the church, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary or 200th anniversary this year. And that's why they're so intent on getting this marker ASAP. But the person at the public library and I both realized that we're pretty sure there were Black residents also involved in helping people move on down the line. And I'm not sure that the church folks are as aware of those other participants, and they're certainly not focused on them. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge to include everyone who should be recognized and included, or at least alluded to, even if we can't prove it.
And they also have a problem, and a lot of groups have this problem, is that you've got the other side too. Their church also had people who were pro-slavery in their ranks, and they had people who were anti-Black in their ranks. And no one wants to talk about them either. So yeah, that's especially the Presbyterian church, their history just as a whole church is quite, they've split a lot of times over it, because the church at one time, slavery was fine, and then some left. And in that group, some left because of, racial equality, and no one wants to talk about that. So.
I've got a question. We do have Beecher Presbyterian Church in Lawrenceburg, and then we also have Westport Church and Eastport Church. They joined together and became the Tanner Valley Church. And we're thinking about, since the same families still go to that church now, is there a state award that we can give them?
The only state award I know for kind of continuous is with businesses and that are over 100 years old, and farms that have been held in the same family for 100 years, I think, the Hoosier Homestead Award. But I don't think there's anything for churches.
Okay.
I'm just thinking we have Indiana Historical Society Awards, but I'm not sure that fits any of the categories. And I don't know if Indiana Landmarks has anything else other than the homestead and.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was like a Freedom Award or something, because the same families were, bringing Blacks through Dearborn County, and we have records of them bringing them through. And then those same families are belonging to the Tanner Valley Church now. They've consolidated. So it was just a thought we had on maybe Martin Luther King Day or something like that, having a program there and giving them an award or something like that, or recognizing them.
Well, if it's Underground Railroad related, we can get them the Network to Freedom Award, which is through the National Park Service. And I can talk to you about that, and that's a recognition of Underground Railroad activity. So if you've got the documentation to prove that, that's an easy thing to work through.
So any other questions? We've got about 9 minutes left.
I have a thought for the idea about churches. Indiana Landmarks does have Sacred Places Indiana. That's David Fedrick, and he might at least have an idea. So
yeah, the Sacred Places program is for active churches that are having financial issues, of some things that they can do in their church, both for the historic part of the church, the building, things like that, resources. Don't have an award that I know of, but maybe they'd be willing to, give something special for a group or something like that. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Jeannie, for your time and for
Always.
sharing resources. And thank you all for joining us today. It's really great to see your faces. And if you haven't signed up yet, we're having another county historian virtual training next week on Tuesday, November 2nd, and I'll be sending out some reminders about those coming up. But Michelle, if you want to mention real quick what that one's going to be about.
Sure. Yeah, my colleague Ben Bauman and I will be presenting on oral history. Ben heads up our Indiana Legislative Oral History Initiative, wherein he and I both have done interviews with former legislators. So talking a little bit about access to those resources and the interviews themselves and some things he's learned about state government from the interviews. There's been some interesting tidbits, certainly. And then I'll give a little sort of rundown on the nuts and bolts of practicing oral history and methodology, and maybe some takeaway tools that you all can take back to the historical societies, or even just some resources of actually doing oral histories, because we are available for trainings in that regard as well. So looking forward to it very much.
Thank you. I think it'll be a great session. All right, so any final questions before we wrap up?
Thank
Judy,
you. This was very helpful. Thank you.
That's very good.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.